So last but certainly not least, we have Todd Burlet from Starry Skies North. Todd is a delegate of Dark Sky International, co-founder, board member, and president of Starry Skies North, the Minnesota chapter of Dark Sky International. He serves on the Community Engagement Subcommittee of the American Astronomical Society's Committee for the Protection of Astronomy and the Space Environment, and is a member of the Society for Light and Lighting. Todd is a retired staff engineer and engineering manager whose 37-year career in the aerospace industry spanned commercial, military, and space programs. Todd holds a BA in physics from St. Olaf College. And he is a lifelong amateur astronomer and photographer, and when he's not advocating for dark skies, he enjoys canoeing, biking, and scuba diving. Hi, Todd.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for having me here today. Let me go ahead and start sharing my screen and let me know when that shows up.
I see it.
Awesome. So we love to talk about dark skies. We love to talk about everything that Audubon is doing to help keep our skies nice and dark. Audubon and others do an amazing job this time of year and in the fall, of course, talking about their Lights Out program. And that's been effective. And I think it's really raised the level of awareness with the public and with decision makers about the importance of making sure that we're protecting our avian friends during those migration periods. And so I don't need to repeat that messaging. They've already got that covered. And so rather than just parrot what they're already saying, what they're already doing, I thought I would spend some time today talking about different reasons why light pollution matters, things that have to do, yes, with migration, but also during the rest of the year, what's going on every day around the year in the lives of birds and how that's impacted by light pollution. So let's go ahead and get started. Oh, I should introduce myself. Well, you did an amazing job of introducing me. I will introduce the chapter. So we're Starry Skies North. We're the Minnesota chapter of Dark Sky International, which works globally to fight light pollution. And so what do we mean when we say light pollution? Because of course, light's a great tool of our modern society. We use it all the time. I use light. All of us use light. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. But if I can get over to here, here's what we mean when we say light pollution. And it's really the inappropriate or excess use of light at night. And so we're all familiar with this, especially in the upper left there, that glare, right? That's the neighbor's garage lights that are shining into your bedroom window. It's those high beams at night while you're driving down the highway. So that very inappropriate light that just makes it harder for us to see. Clutter is just a collection of all of those glaring sources. And then light trespass is probably the one that is most irksome. We don't go a week without getting some sort of an appeal from somebody about my neighbor has got these horrible yard lights or what have you. So light trespass often comes from lights that are mounted on the outside of your neighbor's house that are shining into your house, into your yard. But it could also start from inside their house with those indoor lights that are shining through that picture window, shining out to your yard and beyond. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then sky glow, of course, is that accumulation of all of those light sources. And that can really be disruptive to birds, not just during migration, but really year round. So that's what we mean when we say light pollution. So think about not light per se, but using the wrong light in the wrong places at the wrong times. So you may have seen maps that are similar to this. This is a satellite image of light pollution over the United States. And as you can see, everything east of the Mississippi is pretty much light polluted at this point. And we're down to the point where only about 1 in 5 of us, 20% of us, can see the Milky Way when we step outside and we look at that at night. 99% of us are living under some level of light pollution, and it's getting worse fast. It's growing at about 10% a year. And of course, if you're looking at that Mississippi flyway, starting at the Gulf of Mexico, coming up through Minnesota, you can see what the birds are facing. There's bright lights, with those whites and those red colors indicating the brightest lights, really along their whole path. So that's disrupting them, both specifically with buildings that have light spill coming out of their windows, as well as just the sky glow of the general light from the city. So that's kind of where we're at these days. So again, I wanted to talk about other things that are going on with birds besides those window strikes. So I wanted to start at the bottom, start with the bird itself. So the organism, what's going on in their biology, what's going on in their daily circadian rhythm, their sleep wake cycle. And like all life on Earth, including humans, birds evolved with a natural day-night cycle. And organisms figured out very early in the history of life on Earth that there was this blue thing over them all day long. We call it the sky. And that went away at night. And that got wired into our biology, whether we are a fungus or an algae or a bird or a human or a wombat. That blue dome became a signal for its daytime. And when we lose that blue dome, that's nighttime. So whether we're a nocturnal bird, whether we're diurnal, or whether we're crepuscular, that coming and going of blue in our visual field is the clue to us that it's either daytime or nighttime, which was great up until, about 50 years ago when we started to introduce a lot of LED lights, especially those blue bright LEDs into our environment. LEDs are generally great. They're long lasting, they're energy efficient, but those higher color temperatures, those 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 Kelvin color temperatures that give us those very bluish lights have a lot of blue component in there. And that's what confuses our brains, confuses the brains of birds, makes us think that it's still daytime. So that's why parents are always telling their kids to get away from their screens at night, because that bluish light from that screen is getting into our eyes and it's disrupting that circadian rhythm through melatonin. When we lose that blue sky at night, that's a signal to our brains that they should release melatonin, which floods through the body, tells the rest of the body it's time to rest, repair, recover. So we go out and we do all sorts of great things. We think of melatonin as that sleep hormone, right? You can even buy bottles of melatonin that'll help you sleep at night. And it absolutely is that, but it's really a Swiss Army knife that does so much more for us and for birds. It's an antioxidant. It's an anti-inflammatory. It has DNA repair mechanisms, which means it's anti-cancer. So as we shut down that melatonin production by having those bluish lights all night, we're really affecting not just how well we sleep, but how well we rest, repair, recover. And that impacts humans. So we can see higher cancer rates, higher rates of metabolic diseases. There's obviously less research on the health impacts of birds, but you can extrapolate reasonably that they are experiencing some sort of health impacts, long-term health impacts from light pollution. And we do know through studies that they're experiencing short-term health impacts, namely things like their circadian rhythm, things like when they're waking and moving around, body temperature, those circadian indications of what normally happens between day and night are being disrupted. Sleep duration and quality are being disrupted. We talked about that immune function. So we know that birds and even their chicks have compromised immune systems when they're exposed to this bluish light at night. And that's stressing them out. We can measure the rate of oxidative stress in these birds. And so these birds aren't sleeping well. They're not getting that full restorative rest that they need, and that's showing up in their ability to fight infections and the stress levels that they're dealing with on a daily basis throughout their lives. So moving up from the organism to the community, we get what's called photoperiod masking, which is something that really happens not just to birds, but to humans and the species throughout the environment. And that's really having an impact on when things start. So many of you have probably seen those studies, those news articles about birds in urban areas that are starting to sing 30, 60, even 90 minutes earlier than their rural counterparts. And that's because of this photoperiod masking. Photoperiod masking, it's a fancy term. What it means is if you take the dawn light that would normally be that signal for birds to start waking up, start going about their daily activities, and you add in the extra light in the environment from all of those lights that are on all night, those street lights are on until sunrise, basically, and all of the lights from our buildings and whatnot, that combined makes the birds think that dawn is coming earlier in the day than it actually is. And the same thing's happening at night. It seems like dusk is happening later because you've got the remaining light from sunset plus the light from light pollution makes birds think that the day length is longer. And of course, day length is a key marker for them of when they are supposed to be doing things, whether it's their daily things, such as when they're going to be waking up, going out and feeding, or when they're doing seasonal things. So when they're going to be migrating. So birds that are down south going to be migrating up north, they think the day is a little bit longer than it actually is. And so they're leaving earlier. And so they're getting up to Minnesota a little bit earlier. They're encountering weather that they're not expecting because they've evolved to expect a certain correlation between day length and temperature. And now we've pulled that correlation apart. The same thing is happening when those birds are heading south in the fall. They're staying too long because they don't think it's as far into the fall as it actually is. So again, we've stretched that phonology and we're confusing them by having a disconnect between apparent length of day and what season and what temperature it actually is. So that shows up not just in when they're migrating or when they wake up in the morning, but also advancing the breeding season by up to a month. And in some cases, it actually, and I don't understand this, but this is what the researchers are saying, it actually can deter breeding by up to a month. So again, we've kind of broken that phonology connection there. And of course, the problem with that is if you're mating earlier, your chicks are being born earlier, those food sources that you're expecting to go out and feed to your chicks, feed to yourself, may not be ready yet because you're where you want to be, but you're there a month earlier than you should. So that has ripple down effects. We're seeing breeding rates are negatively impacted. There are fewer chicks in the nests. And those chicks, again, have that higher level of cortisol. So these chicks, even as babies, are stressed out by what's going on in their environment. So it's hard to have a picture of a bird waking up early, excuse me. But here's a great picture of our food crops and photoperiod masking. This is a picture of winter soybean. This was taken down in Arkansas, I think. And this is soybean that's getting ready to be harvested. All of that brown stuff that you see, that's soybean that has set, it's dried out, it's ready for the farmer to come in and harvest that. So what's going on with that green stuff? Well, the answer is that little stick that you see kind of near the upper right of all of the green stuff. That's a street light. And that street light is providing photoperiod masking to those soybeans that are right closest to that street light. Those soybeans haven't gotten the message. They think it's still summer. They're off doing their summer stuff and they're not ready to set seed. They're not ready for that farmer to come in and harvest them. So it's just a great visual of photoperiod masking being alive and well and working in our environment in ways that we don't often recognize and certainly don't appreciate. All right, so moving on now from that community to the broader ecosystem, the effects on their food sources. So here we're talking, of course, about the insectivores, and we're all very familiar at this point with the insect apocalypse. And so here are some ways that light pollution is contributing to the insect apocalypse. There's a lot going on, of course, with neonics and what have you. But light pollution is certainly playing a very significant role here. So it's disrupting that egg laying and the larva and their growth. Insects, of course, they're trying to get from point A to point B, right? From where they nest to where they're going to feed. They can't get there because they want to use the moon to navigate. And the way they do that is they keep the moon on their back. That's how insects evolve. If the moon is on my back, I know I'm flying in a certain direction and I'm flying straight and level. And that's great until you encounter a street light, and then they're trying to do that same thing. They think that source is, it's now the brightest thing in the sky. It's brighter than the moon, so they think it's the moon. And so they're trying to keep the moon at their back. And so they're flying, doing somersaults around this light. And of course, what's happening? They're not getting to where they need to be to continue their daily life cycle events. But it's also concentrating all of those insects near those light sources. We have two types of bats in Minnesota, generally speaking. The types of bats that don't mind light pollution and the types of bats that do mind light pollution. So some of those bats, the ones that tolerate light pollution and bright lights, are flying over and they're chowing down because the dinner bell's been ringing. And so they are really overeating. They're eating their way through the food supply. And so that's going to impact them eventually. Meanwhile, the bats that don't like lights are avoiding those lights and they're off hiding in the woods and the fields where have you. And they're going hungry. So we're impacting the really the food web and eating through the supply of insects and contributing to the insect apocalypse. And of course, those insects are affecting not just the bats, but the birds and everything else that uses an insect that later is going to interact with birds in one way or another. So continuing on then with ecosystem services, we're talking about food. Let's talk about the plants. So this might be a tree that they're going to nest in. It could be a tree where they're getting nectar from, where they're getting fruit from. And plants are, as we saw in that great picture of the soybeans, they are experiencing this photoperiod masking. So they're budding out earlier than they should be. And so that's putting them at greater risk of having that frost freeze cycle. It's a little bit cooler and damper in the spring, so they're more exposed to funguses. And they're also leaving their stoma open at night. Normally, plants will close their stoma, those little air vents at the bottom of the leaves will close up at night. They're leaving them open longer because they think it's still daytime. And so they're losing more moisture through the leaf surface that way. So now they're less drought tolerant. So we're putting more stress on the plants that are being used, whether that's for food sources, for nesting, what have you. Similar thing going on with water itself. Daniela did a great job. I loved listening to her talking about, what a bird needs in its environment, that fresh water. Certainly what we're seeing happening with our water sources is increase in algae growth, because algae is what? It's another plant. What do plants want? They want energy from light. And so we're giving it to them. And then if you add in suburban runoff of fertilizers, we've now got energy, we've got food. Algae are loving that. They say thank you very much. And we get a lot more algae growth. In a balanced ecosystem, that's not too much of a problem because algae are eaten by zooplankton, the tiniest little critters in pond water. That's the stuff that we looked at in microscopes in fourth grade when we looked at pond water. And those things don't like to get eaten, like a lot of life. So during the daytime, because they're the tiny little things, they hide at the bottom where they're less likely to be seen and consumed. And then at night, they rise up through the water column. They're predating, eating the algae, keeping that algae population in check. But of course, you can see where I'm going with this, right? Shine that light into the water. The zooplankton can't tell it's dark. They never rise up to eat that algae. Now you've got algae growth. And so you've got fewer zooplankton, smaller zooplankton, and they sitting at the base of the food chain mean that there's less food available for every other link going up the food chain. So we're affecting the birds' ecosystem services. few more quick things on habitat and the food web. So we talked about habitat degradation. We're also exposing or creating more vulnerability for the birds because they're exposed to that light. It's easier for predators to spot them, whether they're nesting birds or eggs in the nest. And of course, birds are looking for that combination of what? Food, water, and shelter. But food, water, and shelter that isn't exposed to bright light. And so they have to make that lose-lose decision. Do I give up on being close to food, water, and shelter? Or do I give up being in a dark place where I won't be predated upon? So it's kind of a lose-lose situation. And then, of course, for some of our birds, not so much for the songbirds, but certainly for the raptors, we've put our thumb on the scale of that predator-prey relationship. So here's on the right, that's a great image. I tried to make it as scaled correctly as possible. The point being, look at the size of the owl's eyes versus the size of the mouse's eyes. Those owl eyes are huge, of course, because they need to hunt at night. So they've got that advantage. They're able to find their prey at night. Uh, the mice don't stand a chance. They can't see that owl coming unless and until we give them the light that they need in order to see that raptor coming. Now they can get out of the way. So now we've made it harder for our raptors and our predators to find their food sources at night. So we've put our thumb on the scale of that relationship. Okay, I am going to talk about migration. Not so much about window strikes because we've already got that covered. Thank you very much, Audubon. Great job. But there are other things going on with bird migration that are negatively impacted by light pollution. The first thing is diversion. Migrating birds at night are attracted to those city lights. So we saw that map of North America with those city lights stretched all the way up and down the eastern half of the United States, up and down that Mississippi corridor. Birds that are flying along are visually attracted to those brighter lights of the city. And so they're going to divert from the rural areas and get pulled into those cities. Once they get there, the light washes out the polarized light that they can use to navigate from. And so they become disoriented by the loss of navigation clues because all of each individual light in an urban setting has its own set of polarization. And so it just ends up being a random mess. And birds can no longer rely on using polarized light to help them navigate it at night. And what they end up doing is end up spending all night basically circling an urban center, not being able to get out of that because A, they can't find their way with polarized light, and B, because they've lost their night adaptation, just like our eyes that see better after we've been in the dark for a little while. Same thing with birds. So they fly into these brightly lit areas. They lose that night vision adaptation. They couldn't see their way out of the city, even if they could see that polarized light. And then where they're stopping on the way to migrate, again, has been degraded. The ecosystem services of where they're stopping along their migration route have been degraded. They've got the same issues with being exposed to predators that we were talking about. And as these birds get pulled more towards the urban areas, they're also getting exposed to urban light pollution, or excuse me, urban air pollution. So yet another layer of impact on those birds. And these last 2 points, this is kind of a bummer in terms of the research that is out there and what it means for our ability to really mitigate this. This first one is the researchers have found even lights that are low to the ground, so those 1-story, 2-story buildings, the houses that we live in, and those low buildings, even with light that is aimed down towards the ground, so we're doing that shielding that we always recommend people do, that's not enough because even that is still attracting those birds, which means we're left with a more limited set of tools of ways that we can reduce our impact on birds and their bird migration. And we'll talk about that in a minute. And then unfortunately, the other thing that we're always telling people is, as I started off by talking about that blue light being so bad for our eyes, for our health, and for bird health. We always tell people to go with those warmer lights, those 3000 Kelvin, 2700 Kelvin. Excuse me. That turns out to not work as effectively as we would have thought because researchers have found that even red light disrupts the ability of birds to pick up on those magnetic markers that they can see in their eyes that we can't see. So kind of a negative impact there. So again, we've got a smaller set of things that we can do to help reduce our impact on birds as they migrate. Here's a great picture. This is from a study that McDonald Observatory did down in Texas. So we talked about those birds losing their way because they can no longer see the Earth's magnetic field. They can no longer see that polarized light. This is a bird that's flying over a distribution area. So one of these large warehouse areas with all the semi trucks coming in. That's what the lights are that you see at the bottom. And this is a migrating bird that came in. I'm sorry, I lost my note on which species this was, but it was a bird that was migrating through, not an insectivore trying to feed. Which would have obviously had a very similar flight path. So this is a bird that should be going straight. It's trying to go straight, but it no longer knows where straight is. Oops, hang on. We got too far. All right. Well, let's try this. All right. So in summary, here you go. This is it. This is kind of a big splash image with a lot of words on there. Each one of these is an impact that birds are experiencing throughout their lives, including migration, due to light pollution. And you can read through all of these. So the point being, again, that it's not just the light that's coming through those skyscrapers, those 10, 20, 30-story buildings, or even from streetlights. It's light that is down low. It's light that is in urban areas. It's in suburban areas. And they're really being impacted not just during migration, but every night of the year. So think about that when you're thinking about putting that bird feeder out, thinking about making sure that you've got a really dark environment for them so that they're able to rest, repair, recover, and be part of a healthy bird population. All right. So what can we do? So we talked a little bit about all of those impacts. We've talked about some of the things that may not be as effective as we'd like. But fortunately, everyone can play a role. The thing on the right, self-certify your home. This is really fun. If you've got kids, if you've got a scout troop, if you've got brownies, if you've got a classroom, you can go out, you can scan that QR. That will take you to some place where you can download just a fun little sheet where you can go around your home, the home with your parents, and self-certify that. You look at how you're using light. Are those lights shielded? You fill that out. You upload that, and then you're going to get a certificate that the kids can display. So it's a great way for engaging really anyone, but especially kids in making sure that your home is as bird safe as it can be. And then on the left is what we call the 5 principles. If you're familiar with light pollution, you've maybe seen these things before. First and foremost is light should serve a purpose. It should be useful. If you've got that porch light that's on all night, it doesn't need to be on all night. Think about turning that off and just not putting in a light in the first place unless it's going to serve an actual purpose. It should be targeted. It should have that shield, so it's going to light up what you want it to light up, not light up your neighbor's window, not light up the birds that are trying to fly through. Low level, use as much light as you need for the purpose at hand. Light, after all, is a tool. Whether we're working out in the yard, what have you, use the amount of light you need, certainly, but then no more. Adding more light isn't going to make your task any easier. Think about how much light you're using and is that the appropriate amount, and then control it. Put it on those timers, those motion detectors, those dimmers. If you're worried about safety, I always recommend those motion detectors because that's going to be that startle effect. If someone's coming through your neighborhood, through your yard, that light's going to snap on. And then when they move on, then that light's going to go off. we can give the nighttime environment back to the birds and the other nocturnal creatures. And then that color. Even though red light may not be as effective as we would like it to be for migrating birds, it's still healthier overall, whether it's birds sleeping at night, your family sleeping in its bedrooms, or the neighbor across the street. So those 2000, 2700 Kelvin amber bulbs are going to be better all around. And then if you want to amp it up, you can do a little bit more. If you are a business owner or you know someone who has a business, we are now starting to certify dark sky friendly businesses. This is something that we're doing for free. We're all volunteers, so we will come in, look at a business that's got some lights, recommend some changes that they can make. If they make those changes, we'll certify them. They can get a window sticker to stick in their window, stick on their front door, identify them as someone that cares about the natural environment and about the health of their community. Certainly proposing city lighting ordinances is always great. Close your shades at night. So we talked a little bit about how light, even from first, 1 and 2 story buildings, is really disruptive to those birds. We call that light spill, that indoor light that ends up being outdoors. Simple solution: close your shades, close your curtains at night. And then we always encourage everyone to just tell one person, pick one person and tell them what you've heard today. And that's how we spread change. Finally, these are some links we can share out, the e-version of these slides later, so that you can click into these. You may have already seen the Lights Out for Birds, that 3-minute video from Cornell Lab. But the other two are a lot of fun too, and I highly recommend them. They're great. One's 30 seconds. It's kind of like a public service announcement. The other is a 3-minute animated video. And those are put out by our friends over at Dark Sky Oregon. So this is a great time of year to grab those. They're great fodder for having on a screen that's just running somewhere, sending out to your audience so that they can watch them and share with other people. They're both animated, pretty lighthearted. It's a serious subject, of course, with building collisions and that sort of thing. But they're far from graphic, and especially the first one is just a lot of fun. So I encourage you to go out and watch those. And then, of course, for me personally, being someone that cares about the stars above us, I just want to let you know that our celestial birds will benefit too. So we've got Cygnus the swan, of course, over there on the left. In the middle, Harriet the eagle, if you're familiar with Harriet. Mary Beth Garrigan and Petra Lohman painted Harriet the eagle as Aquila, one of the constellations in our night sky. And then, of course, Corvus, the crow. That's actually a spring constellation that's up right now. So by helping our terrestrial birds, you're also helping our celestial birds, which I appreciate. And again, here's us. We operate statewide, and we're all volunteers. We do this because we want to do it. We're a nonprofit. And so if you're on this call and you're in Minnesota, we're a resource for you. If you want help with proclamations, if you want some outreach material, we're here for you. This is what we do, and this is who we are. And I think I'm done.
Thanks, Todd. I think we probably have time for a question or two here, if you have a moment to keep it to answer those. So Joan was wondering if the West has less less light pollution than we're seeing here, and so if there's phenology differences more in the East than in the West.
The primary difference between why the east half of the United States is so much brighter is really because that's historically that's farmland, and so it's more densely populated. There's just more of us humans in the eastern half of the United States. The western half, a little bit more rangeland. It's a little drier, and so there's just fewer of us living there. So we're where we are because there's a lot of moisture, and that's also where the birds are. So unfortunately, we and the birds are interested in the same things, which is having enough moisture for the activities of daily living. So that's why the West is darker.
No, that what I meant are the phenological differences different. Are there Like, does the East United States have more of a phenological difference than the West does because there's more light pollution in the East?
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you for clarifying. I haven't seen the research. Usually the research is, I haven't seen research that's looked at East versus West. The research is always species based, and I apologize, I'm not enough of a birder to know what the range is of the various species that they've studied. But certainly, I would expect that to be the case, just more generally, because the light pollution, if you smear out, over large geographic areas, is lesser in the West than in the East. But I think it would be very dependent on where that bird lives. So if you've got a suburban or an urban bird, that's being heavily impacted by that phenology shift. Whereas a bird that is settling in a little bit more of a rural area, it's a little bit darker for them, so they may have less impact.